Computer. Okay. So welcome. We're gonna do Daf Yud Zayin, that page 17 in Gemara Sotah. We're one page before the end of the parak of second parak of Masechta Sotah. And exciting, we're getting ready for Yutas Kislev this week, which we're gonna finish the last few daf that each of us need to do. And we're gonna make a siyum and a half of Masechta. And then next year, Yutas Kislev, our goal together is to finish the Masechta. Should not be a problem before make a full siyum next year Yutas Kislev. So to understand it, we're going to learn today, at least the first half is going to be a little bit of an interesting Gemara, which we never had so detailed yet so far, I think, in our class, about how the Chachamim, the three opinions, argue on the psukim. And we're going to study today. We learned about the, remember we learned about which earth, how do you get the earth for the concoction that needs to be made. And today we're going to learn about the verses that need to be rubbed off. We're even going to learn today, like what kind of ink does it need to be written on, so it could be completely erased. But we're going to learn about what psukim, what verses in the Torah need to be erased in order for them to make the concoction. How many psukim? And there's a three-way debate here. So in order to understand it, to make it really simple for you guys, we're going to read the psukim inside. There is verse 19, 20, 21, 22, and 23. There's 5 psukim. I'm going to read it even in English, and I'll just read it in English, and then I'll show you, maybe we'll read some in Hebrew too, and then we'll go over the machlokes. I'll show you what each pasuk is saying, so it'll be very clear, because it's complicated. If you just read the Gemara, it'll be very clear. So we're going to study it, the bit in the verses, just to make it simple. So let's read, we're going to read, not the bold words, we're going to read the psukim, and then I'll go back over a second time, after you get a general picture, and you'll understand exactly what the debate is. So just follow along as I'm going to read the psukim in English, the 5 psukim. That's really the whole discussion of the main part of the complicated part of the Gemara. I'll make it very clear. The kohen shall then place her under oath and say to the woman, if no man has lain with you, and you have not gone astray to become defiled to another in place of your husband, right? Because you don't know what happened. So he's saying if nothing happened, then you will be absolved through these bitter waters, which caused the curse. So you'll be absolved because you didn't do it. If you didn't do it, that's what's going to happen. Verse 20. But as for you, if you have gone astray to another instead of your husband, and you have become defiled, and another man besides your husband has lain with you, right? So if you did what's wrong, the kohen shall now adjourn the woman with the oath of the curse. He makes the kohen basically telling you what the kohen should tell the woman, and the kohen shall say to the woman, may the Lord make you, right? He says to her, if you did, then may the Lord make you for a curse and an oath among your people when the Lord causes your thigh to rupture and your belly to swell. So that's, there's going to be a curse between all the people when she dies from it. For these curse-bearing waters shall enter your innards, causing the belly to swell and the thigh to rupture, and the woman shall say, Amen, Amen. Those are the verses. Finally, verse 23, then the kohen shall write these curses on a scroll and erase it in bitter water, So that's the 5 psukim, that's the discussion. Now that you have the general overview, right? Clear? Everyone, I think it's pretty clear. Now that you have the general overview, we're going to go back and I'm going to show you what's unique about each pasuk. So, pasuk 19, the first part of the pasuk is directions. We're going to have it twice. And you see in verse 19 and verse 21, the first part of the verse are not the curse, they're just directions to the kohen what to do. So let's start with the directions. The kohen shall then place her under oath and say to the woman. That's simply directions. That's the Torah telling directions to the kohen what to do. The second part of the verse gets into the details of what's he going to tell her. Now, what he tells her also in this first verse is unique. He there's going to be a question here, is it considered a curse or not? Because he actually tells her, if you didn't do it, you will be good. Look at the verse. If no man has lain with you, and you have not gone astray to become defiled to another in place of your husband, then you will be absolved through these bitter waters which cause the curse. So that's kind of saying you won't be cursed, because if you didn't do it. The question is, it still implies that if you did do it, in other words, is this a curse or not a curse? he's saying you won't be cursed if you didn't do the act, but that definitely implies that if you did do the act, you will be cursed. So is an implied curse considered a curse? That's going to be the question here. It's an implied curse. It's not a curse. It's an implied curse that is going to be, is that, and the Torah says you should erase the curse into the waters. Well, this is an implied curse, and that's going to be a debate. If the second half of it's first, there's going to be a question on the first part of verse 19 because it's just the directions to the kohen what to do. So does that get rubbed off into the water? And then the second half of verse 19, which is not an actual curse, it's an implied curse. Does that go into the waters? Now, verse 20, that's not an implied curse, that's a direct curse. So everyone's going to agree, verse 20, that it gets rubbed off into the waters. But as for you, if you have gone astray to another instead of your husband, you have become defiled, and another man besides your husband has laid with you. So now he's talking about where she actually did the sin. And now, again, directions. The first half of verse 21 is again direction. So again, subject to debate if this should go in, because do the directions that are given to the kohen what to do go in? The kohen shall now adjourn the woman with the oath of the curse, which and the kohen shall say to the woman. Again, verse 21 starts off with more directions to the kohen. Again, debate, does that go into the waters or not? Because it's just directions. Now, the end of verse 21, everyone agrees it goes in because it's not an implied curse, it is a curse. May the Lord make you for a curse and an oath among your people when the Lord causes your thigh to rupture and your belly to swell. So again, a direct curse, and that for sure goes into the water according to everyone. Now, verse 22, again, for these curse-bearing waters shall enter your innards, causing your belly to swell and the thigh to rupture. Again, this is direct curse. And now is the response of the woman. Again, this is subject to debate because it's not the curse going in the water, it's the woman's response. And the woman shall say, Amen, Amen. Again, subject to debate if the woman's response also goes into the water or not. So these are 4 verses. There's 3 general topics here. There's the clear curses that the woman that's written, that for sure everyone agrees goes into the water. There is implied curses. There's implied curses. And everybody agrees that the implied curses. Mitch, I'm just muting you. Unmute yourself if you want to say something because there was a little noise in the background. There's implied curses, and the implied curses is a debate if implied curses goes in or just direct curses go in. Then there is directions given to the kohen. Again, debate if the directions given to the kohen what to do go in or not go in. I think that's pretty clear. Yeah, I made it simple and clear. Tried to hopefully make it clear. Now, what do they argue in? Which verses do they argue in? They argue in verse 23, which doesn't go in. I don't think according to anyone goes into the water. This is the general directions that you should erase the verses into the water. What did the verse say? Then the kohen shall write these curses on a scroll and erase it into it in the bitter water. That's all it says. Right? She should write these above earlier 4 verses in the scroll and put it into the water. Now, the Hebrew, let's look at the Hebrew for a second. It says v'kasa. V'kasa means you should write. As ha'olois, the olois means curses. Okay. Ha'ela means these. Okay. You should write these curses, and how they learn those 3 words, es ha'olois ha'ela, these curses, which is describing what gets put in, is the debate about what to include more. Do you include also the implied curses, or do you include even more? Do you include even the directions? Or do you exclude the direction and you do exclude the implied curses based on how to read the verse that's telling you should erase it into the concoction? What are the words here? Because alois means curses. They didn't need to say ha alois, the. It actually says s is the curses. And again, hey, the curses. The hey is superfluous here when it says curses. So alois is coming to include the curses. Ha alois is including even more, which could be including the implied curses, or it could be included the directions too. And ha'ela, we'll see, we're going to learn exactly in a minute. Ela means these curses, means it's deducting. You don't include everything. Ela means just do these. So what is it excluding? It means just do these curses, not everything, excluding. Either Ela could be excluding. I don't mean, because the verse said include curses. Maybe you mean even the curses that Moses tells the Yid in the book of Deuteronomy, in the book of Devarim. Maybe he means that. So it says, no, Ela, I mean these curses. Now it adds the hey and says, ha Ela, an extra hey, telling me, also limiting it. So according to the opinion that says, don't include the directions and don't include the woman's response or don't include implied curses will also be learned out from the extra hay there. So every hay is there's an extra hay here. There's also Elo, which is limiting it, which means what not to include. There's a hey, that's what we're going to learn in the Gemara, the debate about how much of the above do we include. Again, there's 4 categories that could be included. Everyone agrees included the direct curses. The question is the directions given to the Kohen, the implied curses, and the woman's response, is that included or not? That's going to be the discussion in today's Gemara, what goes in. So again, fascinating Gemara, interesting debate about what goes in and what not. There's 3 opinions. So the first one, Ba loy lichtai, let's look inside. Ba loy came to him, lichtai v'asa Megillah, to write the Megillah. Came to him, it's time to write the Megillah now. They're doing the Sotah system, and they need to write the Megillah. Me'eza makoim hu kaisef, from which place in the Torah do you write? From where in the Torah am I writing? Okay, I need to write. So what do I need to write? So he says, the first opinion is, don't include the directions. Don't tell the Kohen what to do. Start from the implied curses. The imloy shachav ish, from the verse 19, the middle, where it says, and if you didn't lay with a man, you weren't with the man, that's the implied curse. So the first opinion is include even the implied curses. Then v'at kisatis tachas ishech, and continue if you did sin with your husband. But you don't include v'hishbia hakoyin as isha. You don't include where the kohen should make the woman swear, which is the directions to the kohen. So include so far the implied curses, include the direct curses, but you should not. This opinion holds. Don't put in directions. Not in the verse 19. In the beginning, there was directions, as I showed you in verse 21. There was directions. Don't include the directions to the kohen in that what you're scrubbing off, just in curses and implied curses. And then he writes the clear curses Hashem should make you, as a curse and as a promise, a swear. The verse continues, and the bitter water should come into you. Hey, these waters in your innards. To make your belly swell up and to fall down and to die. Right? And you don't, again, what are you not including? Where the woman's response, also is not included. So far he says, include the direct curses, include the implied curses, but don't include directions to the kohen, and do not include the woman's response. That doesn't go into the thing. Okay, that's opinion number 1. That's what we're going to say, Rabbi Meir. That is Rabbi Meir. That's a Tanakama. That's the first opinion of the Mishnah. Opinion number 1 of what we erased. Rabbi Yossi says, no, he says include even more. Lo haya mafsik. You don't interrupt. Once you start the verse, once you start writing, you keep on writing. In other words, the first set of directions in verse 19 to the kohen, okay, don't include the first set of directions to the kohen. I agree with that. Start from the middle of verse 19 where the implied curses are. But when you get to a second time on verse 21 in the beginning where there was again directions to the kohen, don't stop. Just keep on going straight. Include the directions the second time because it's already in the middle of what you started writing. So write a complete section. Start from the middle of verse 19 after the first set of directions. Include the implied curses, but then keep on going straight. Keep on going straight till you're done. But don't, don't stop and go till the end. I think we're going to see, I don't remember, we're going to see if we include... you include even the part where the woman's response is over there. Yes. What's that? Let me see. Okay. I'm going to look at it later, okay? When I'm finished. Lay down in your bed, listen to the story. I'm going to look at it when I come up. Okay, so that is Rabbi Yossi's opinion of Lo haya mafsik. He says, don't stop. Once you start the middle of verse 19, go to the end of verse, what I think was 22. 19, 20, 21, and 22, all 4 verses, just go to the end of the 4th verse. So he's the most inclusive. Rabbi Yehuda is the most strict, the least that you put in. Rabbi Yehuda says, Kol atzmai eine kaisev. The only thing you write is not the implied curses. Eliyitein Hashem oisach la'olo l'shvua. Only where it says clearly that Hashem should make you as a curse. And these waters should come into your innards and cause you to fall apart, to get swelled. And he doesn't write that the woman says amen amen. So he doesn't include the whole verse 19, which is implied cursive. Only direct, clear curses, no inclusion. Rabbi Yehuda says of implied curses, only direct curses. And I believe also he doesn't include, as we'll see in the Gemara now, even the directions to the Kohen. So the whole verse 19 is out because it's directions and it's implied curses. And even part of the Kohen telling her, the part of implied curse you don't say, and for sure you don't say the directions. I'm looking at Rashi now, and you don't write where the woman says amin amin. So all other options are excluded. Only direct curses are put in there. Those are the three opinions that we learned. So Reb Meir, the Tanakama, the first opinion is medium. Rabbi Huda says include everything, and Rabbi Huda says almost everything. And the third opinion, Rabbi Yosef said he says include everything besides the first directions, and Rabbi Yehuda says include the least only where it's straight out of curse. So those are the three opinions in the Gemara. I hope that's clear, right? I think it's pretty clear. I showed you the Psukim. I hope everything's pretty clear. The Gemara asks on this debate, what are they arguing in? What's the debate? Why do they argue which verses go in? And I already started showing you that. In the last verse, in verse 23, where they get the directions to erase it, in that verse, because the verse says, because of Allah, it says you should write these curses. The Kohen should write it by Sefer in the book, in the parchment. We're going to learn that also in today's class, what it's written on. But that's what it says. So Rameh, you're the first opinion, the Tanakama, who holds you include the implied curses. Savar, he holds when it says the word Allahs in the last verse, verse 23, it says curses. What does it mean? Just the Torah says, write curses in without the hey. It means Allahs mamish, the literal curses. So it says write curses. The word Allahs means the curses. When it says a hey, ha'Allahs, there's a hey added to it. The rabbis, klalois, haba, machmas, berachos. Why does it have an extra hey on the word of curses? Could have just said Allahs. Why is it saying ha'Allahs, the curses, to be more inclusive? Include even the curses that are implied, even though they're not direct curses, they're implied, as I showed you, include the implied curses too. Okay, well then you have a second word, which is Eila, these curses. Now that, when it says include these curses, it's a limitation. It's coming to tell you, we're limiting it to what? So Eila, limute, what is it coming to exclude, not to include? The klalis, the curses, Sheva Mishnah Torah, which is in the book of Devarim. In Mishnah Torah, there are curses there. Don't include the curses. Not all curses included in this woman's concoction potion that you're making. Only curses in our topic, but not curses that Moshe tells the Yidden at the end of his life. And now there's a ha'ela, and then there's also an extra hey on the word ela, these. The ma'ute, so it's coming to exclude even more, to limit it even more. Ma'ute, it's coming to exclude Tzavois, the directions, the commandments that's given to the Kohen, the directions to the Kohen, the Kabbalahs, Amen, Amen, and the woman's response, Amen, Amen, don't include that. So there's two inclusions. One is curses, and then to add to that, even the implied curses. And then there's the opinion that ha'ela these to exclude. Number one, just the word ela means we're excluding the curses of Moshe Rabbeinu and Chumash Devarim. And then on top of that, ha'ela, the extra hey, is saying we're coming to also exclude, don't include the directions, and don't include the woman's response, amen, amen. Okay, so that's opinion number one. Very interesting. We get it very basic. We learn it off the verse, the directions that the Torah tells us to erase it. We learn it from those words, exactly that some is included, some is not included. Rabbi Yossi, what about Rabbi Yossi, who says even include, remember, the second directions and include the woman's response of Amen Amen, include that into Hulu Kida Amrit. Well, first of all, he agrees everything, like you said, most of what you said, but he also does something else. He learns whenever the Torah says the word is debate if in the Torah is teaching us something. Is it kind of grammar correct to say the word in the Torah, or is coming to exclude or include? So he says the word in the verse. I can go back to it for a second. There was a word over here. The word is I'm pointing to it over here. You write S ha'olis. You write the curses. So when the Torah has S, is S also a lesson? We know there's a ton of these S's in the Torah. Why does it say? I think of just to shoot off the bat, like it says, "Kabed esavicha ve'esimecha." It's coming. The S over there is coming to include your older brother, not just honor your parents, but even honor your older brother. So the word S comes to, according to his opinion, the word S is coming to also include. So now we have a third inclusion. So S, why is there a third word that's extra? Because Lerabes is coming to also add Savois v'Kabbalis, according to him, even the directions and even the woman's response, the acceptance, the Kabbalah is included. So he says include that too. The only thing you're not including is the first directions from before you started writing, but once you started writing, just go straight through, include the directions, include the acceptance, everything goes in until you finish that verse. So that's why Rabbi Yossi holds what he holds, because of the word S, he holds as another word that's including even more. Meir, what about a Meir? Well, wait, so what about the first Tanakama? Why didn't the first guy, the first rabbi, learn the word S to include also the directions and the woman's response? Because at S and Leidaris, like I said, not everybody learns that when it says the word S, it's coming to add something. It's something just grammar, the way it's written. He doesn't, the word Esim is not a drasha. He doesn't learn it. He doesn't hold that you learn Esim. It's not agreed upon by everyone. And therefore, there's no third inclusion. And therefore, again, the directions and the acceptance of the woman is not included. Okay, very interesting. Well, what about a third opinion? What does Rabbi Yehuda? Rabbi Yehuda, he holds that anytime there's an extra hey, not that the first time it said a hey, it's coming to include more, and the second time it said a hey, it's coming to exclude more. He says, stick to your standard. He said either hey is coming to include, or a hey is coming to exclude. So he says this is the way he learns. He's going to learn both heys are coming to exclude, and that's why he excludes the most of everyone. He doesn't agree that the second time, or all hey, all heys are coming to exclude. The first hey of ha'alais and the second hey ha'ela are both coming to exclude. Not that the first one's coming to include more and the second one is coming to exclude, but they're both coming to exclude. He says whenever it says a hey, it's excluding. Because alloys, he says you should be standard. You should go across the board. Hey doesn't either add or take away. Hey either both times add or both times takes away. So he says like this, being that they're both excluding. Alloys, when it says curses, always mamish. It means literal curses. That's obvious. Erase the curses, we mean the actual curses put in. Okay, everyone agrees to that. But then when it says ha'alais, there's an extra hey. He doesn't agree with the first opinion that it's coming to include more. He says no, it's coming always to exclude. The mu'ute, the first hey, is excluding klales abayis machmas brachas. It's excluding the curses that are implied because of the blessings. Just remember, verse 19 was really a blessing. We put the Tanakama, Rameir put it in because it implied a curse. But he says that the first hey of ha'alais is excluding that you don't put implied curses in. Then when it says Eila, now you have our second exclusion, the Mu'ute Klalish of Mishnah Torah. That is same, he agrees, as the other opinion that we obviously don't say the curses, only these curses, not the curses in Chumash Dvarim. Now there's a third time, ha'elet, a third hey, which is coming to exclude. The Mu'ute Tzavais v'Kabbalah is to exclude the directions to the Koyin and the acceptance of the woman. So he's saying there's three exclusions. Everything excluded, implied curses, the curses in Dvarim, and the directions and the woman's acceptance, and all that's left is just always the curses that are clearly curses. Okay, so the Gemara says, Rameir. So now, how did Rabbi Yehuda learn? Rabbi Yehuda says, make up your mind, right? Either hey is coming to include or it's coming to exclude. And I'm just going across the board. Rabbi Yehuda says, hey is coming to exclude. Why do you, Rameir, sometimes use the hey to include and sometimes to exclude? Why would you do that? Rameir, and according to Rameir, Maishna hai hey. Why does it differentiate between this hey, the first hey? The marbibe that he's going to include, he makes more learning out of it. And what's the difference between this hey, the second hey, the madbe that he's using it to exclude? So he says, because I'll tell you why. The first hey makes sense that it's coming to include, and the second hey makes sense that it's coming to exclude. Because hey, the first hey, the gabe diribuya, which the word that the hey was attached to was a word that's coming to include. It's saying put the curses in. So being that the hey was on the word that's telling us what to put in, it means it's saying and add even more in, because that hey was attached to the word that's telling us what to put in. It's coming, the ha'alois is saying put stuff in, and I'm putting a hey to that means to add even more. Rebuya he, therefore that hey, it makes sense that it is coming to add more. But hey, the gabe de miyuta, but where the second word, where the hey was connected to the word ela, which is an exclusion, it's saying don't include dvarim. So it's coming to amplify, it's coming to add to its word, which is limiting it. So miyuta, it's coming to say and exclude even more and don't put in. Miyuta, it's coming to exclude even more, and it's coming to tell you that don't put in even more. And therefore, the first hey is coming to include, and the second hey is coming to exclude. Very interesting. Good. So beautiful. Yishmaki Gemara. We see exactly, you wonder sometimes where does the debate come from? And we see mamish how they learned the standard. Probably it's across many years of Gemara. In what's the method of learning? And here we have a debate. A very interesting machlokes. The Rabbi Huda holds stick with your hey. Either you're including more or excluding more. And Rameir learns that if the word is an including word, then the hey is coming to include even more. And if it's an excluding word, then the hey is coming to exclude even more than before. But now we're going to have another interesting question moving right along. But let me ask you a question. It brings up a story. An interesting story. We know, if you look in the story, we learned this obviously in our Chumash class, that where God and Reuven, remember before the Yidden were on the eastern side of the Jordan River, they went over to Moshe Rabbeinu and they said, Moshe, the ground here is very fertile and our animals love this, and we have a lot of animals, so we want to live over here. What did Moshe tell them? Oh my gosh, you guys, you're doing what the Meraglim just did 40 years ago, and now we're all going to get stuck here. And they said, Moshe, you misunderstood us. We are going into Israel. We're not leaving the Yidden here. And what did Moshe Rabbeinu say to them? If so, if you're going to keep your word, I'm going to make a condition. I'm going to make a very strong condition. If you don't stay, if you go into Israel, then you could keep, then retroactively already, you could keep the eastern side of the Jordan River. And if you don't, you can't keep the eastern side of the Jordan River. Now, for those that learn that Chumash, it's very repetitive. The commentaries, I know we talk about this when we get to that parsha. Why is it so repetitive? Moshe says over and over again, repeats the deal. But one of the big highlights, and that's what our Gemara is quoting here now, Moshe doesn't satisfied with saying, if you go in, you can keep the land. He then also says he clarifies that, and if you don't go in, then you can't, then this land is not yours. He's not satisfied. Moshe Rabbeinu is not satisfied there with implication. He doesn't like implication. He says, I don't, even though I could say, if you go in, you could keep the eastern side of the Jordan River, that would imply it. If you don't go in, you can't. But Moshe doesn't imply it. He says it straight out. If you go in, you could keep it. And if you don't go in, you can't keep it. From this, the mayor wants to learn that in Torah, a contract or an opinion has to be clearly, the detailed has to be given out. You do not do implication. You must clearly state both sides of what the deal is. Otherwise, it's no good. Otherwise, you don't have the other side. We do not imply from words in the Torah. It has to be laid out. Otherwise, whatever it's implying, it's not from the Torah. It's not a clear deal. So that's a shiloh over here. Who did I say was the first opinion? Remember, who was the first opinion in our Mishnah? Who said that we are including the implied curses? It was a Tana, all for the Tana Kama. Usually the Tana Kama is the first author of the Mishnah without a no name. Usually it's Rameir, because the notes of the Mishnah came from Rameir. So we assume it's Rameir. But lastly, Rameir. But why is Rameir holding here that implied curses are considered curses, even though it doesn't say a curse, it's just implied, it's considered a curse, and put that in the water? But doesn't Rameir hold elsewhere regarding the subject of does implied wording work? The Klal Lav at the Shemea Hein, doesn't he hold that we don't say whenever the Torah says Lav no, it means yes, that we don't learn the implied yes from the no, that the opposite it means yes? Doesn't Rameir hold in the general rule that because of the story of Reuven and God, we learn from Rameir says we learn from there that we don't follow implication. So we have a shaila. How could the Tanakama say in our Mishnah that implied curses are considered curses when he says you never follow implication from the story of Reuven and God? Very interesting Gemara. Good, interesting question. Rabbi Tanchum, Sir of Tanchum says even though it doesn't say clearly, it's very strongly, it's not just implied, it almost as if it says it clearly. How come it says it clearly? So I'm going to go back to the pasuk for a minute just to show you inside, so we'll see it in the verse why we say it's implied. So there's an interesting word here in the first pasuk. Where is the implied verse? Remember, the first pasuk 19 was the implied curses. It says, if no man has lain with you and you have not gone astray to become defiled to another man in place, and then you'll be absolved through these bitter orders which cause the curse, so you'll be absolved, you won't be cursed. So the word in Hebrew is the imloi satis, you didn't go astray. Tuma tachas ishech, bringing impurity from your husband. Hinaki, the Hebrew word, simply means you will be clean. Now, hinaki means you'll be clean. The problem is, hinaki should have another yud in there. Hinaki should have a yud. It says it's actually not spelled. If, in other words, we have the nekudas, so we read it hinaki. But really, if you didn't have the kudas, you would read it hinki. And hey, it could be switched around with a ches. So if this didn't have the vowels as we have it, and you looked at it, and hey could be swapped out to a ches, it would be chinki. Chinki is chenek, means she should get chenek. So hidden in the grammar, almost in the wording, it almost says that it's not just an implied curse, but it almost is overtly and directly saying, yes, there's chenek to this person if she did what she shouldn't do. So being that there was a word, very interesting answer to the Gemara, being that there is a word, Reb Tanchum wants to answer the question, how could a mayor who usually holds that we don't settle on implication to punish the person, to say it's like considered a curse, because hin kiksiv, since it says hin kiksiv. Therefore, since it says the hin kiksiv, it sounds like it says chinki chenek, and chenek means that it's implied that it's not just implied, but it almost says that if you did what's wrong, you'll get chenek. Triangulation will help you get punished, and therefore we consider it as if it's not just implied, it actually somewhat clearly says it in the verse. Very interesting answer that Reb Tanchum is giving to the above question. Now we're going to go on to Anushtika Gemara. Gemara is going to get much easier now. It was a beautiful, that itself was a beautiful piece of Gemara with deep stuff. Now it's going to flow. I'm going to quote one of the most famous speeches that are given on the first day of Shabbat Brachas. Very often we have, right? Anyone who's been to a few Shabbat Brachas has for sure heard this Dvar Torah, but now you can see it in the Gemara itself. Darish, Rabbi Akiva made a drasha. It says, Ish v'isha, a man and a woman, Zachu, if they merit, if the husband and wife are meritorious, Shechina beinehem, then the divine presence is between them. What do we mean? So what do they say always by the Dvar Torah? The words Ish and the words Isha have the same letters, Aleph and Shin, right? Ish and Isha. Now, the difference between the man and the woman is that the man has a Yud in between the Aleph and the Shin. And the woman has a hey after the aleph and the shin. So the yud and the k, the letters of Hashem's name, make up the yud in the man's name makes him into a isha man, and the hey in the woman's name makes her into a woman. But what happens when you remove God from the man and the woman? Right? You guys have all heard this at a Shabbat Brachas, I imagine. When you take out the yud and you take out the hey, you remove Hashem from their midst. Eish, it's fire. Oh my gosh, it's eish, it's fire, and that's what kind of marriage it'll be. So that's what he says. Zachu, if they merit that God should be back in the Gemara, Shechina b'neihem, the divine presence is between them. They have a yud and they have a hey. This is a man. This is a woman. This is a ish. This is isha. Beautiful, all good. Loi zachu, but if it's not merit, right? Because we're talking about the Sotah where she did something wrong, then eish, oichalta, and a fire, the aleph shin will eat them up, will devour them. Now they never add this part by the Shabbat brachas, but look, now you get to see what the Gemara says next. Amar Rava, so Rava says on this, the isha adifa min the ish. And for the woman, it's better or worse. I thought the isha adifa min the ish. The woman is worse. The woman is worse. The woman's fire, the letter is worse than the man. Why? My time. What's the reason that the hey in the woman it's worse than the man? Because hi mitzaref. This one, go watch it. Here, watch a video on my phone till I come. If you can't fall asleep, I have 50 more minutes. Here, you can go on to video. Go. Let me see. How did it happen? Okay, go watch a video for 15 more minutes, then I'll take care of it. So he says, why? Because Hai Mitzarif. By the man, the Yud is in between the Aleph and the Aish, is between the fire. So you have to pull the Yud out, and then it becomes Aish. So at least the Yud is kind of separating the fire, the Aleph and the Shin. The Hai, Lo Mitzarif, but the Hey, by the woman, it's at the end. So the second the problem starts, in the woman, it comes up kind of quicker and faster to the woman, because the second the Hey moves away, the Aish is already touching. The Yud, I guess the letters still need to connect, still need to get together. By the woman, the Aish is already touching, just the Hey is protecting that it should be Isha, not Aish. But by the Ish, it's in the middle, so it's a little quicker. Anyway, Amar Rav, fine.
Maybe doesn't it say Adifa? Isha Adifa.
I know Adifa, but Adifa, I just looked in Rashi. Adifa means more, means stronger. It means it's a shell. That's how Rashi explains it. A shell, Isha Kasha, is harder, and is quicker to devour. Lipara to punish. Michelle, again, my Rashi is blocked over there. But Adifa doesn't mean better, like more beneficial. It means Adifa like stronger, like the fire is a stronger fire, is the way Rashi is teaching it. Okay. Amar Rava, Rava says, Zakt Rava. New is going to be flowing a little bit like a Gadata style Gemara, like we had before, like stories. Why did the Torah say, Have offer the Sotah, bring earth to a Sotah? What's the connection of earth? Why earth? Why do you need to put earth in the potion, in the concoction? What's the deal with offer here? What's the connection? Why? Zachsa yoytze mimena ben kavram avinu. Because it wants to tell you earth is very much connected to the site. If she's notorious, she never sinned, and she has to go through all this bother. Yoitza Zachsa, which means she'll find out she never did anything. She was just suspect for no reason. Yoitza Mimena comes out from her ben a son Kavram Avinu, like Avram Avinu, meaning that so you put earth in the concoction in the potion to make you think about these things. That if you didn't really do it, you will have a son like Avram. Why is Avram recognized by earth? Why putting earth in the potion do we recognize Avram Diksiv? Because it says in the pasuk, we learned this in Tanya, Diksiv Bei Ofar Ve'efer. Avram said, I'm like dust and ashes, right? When Avram was arguing with Hashem to save the people of Sidon, Avram said to God, how do I have the chutzpah to argue with you? I am like dust and ashes. Why? As Rashi explains there, because I should have been dust and ashes by the fire that Nimrod threw Avram into, and the war that Avram fought against the four kings, and he won. He should have been already totally turned to dust and ashes by those two, without the two miracles of Hashem, yet he's speaking. So when you give the Sotah dirt in the potion, you're saying this dirt represents Avram Avinu, that if you didn't do it, you're going to have a son like Avram Avinu, who spoke about himself like he's dust and ashes. But if she's not notorious, if she really did cheat, she will turn to the dirt. She'll go to the dirt. She'll die, basically, be buried in the dirt. So that's why you put dirt. It's very interesting. There's got to be a lot of reasons. Gemara is one reason why the concoction has dirt. Rava learned Schar Shomer Avram Avinu. Going back to that is pasuk alone, because Avram said, we learned this in our Tuesday night in-depth Gemara class. You're going to see a very interesting Rashi here discussing a pasuk we had a few weeks ago as you learned in depth. Let's see. The Schar Shomer Avram Avinu, in the merit that Avram Avinu said these words: Hashem v'anoichi offer ve'efer, God, I'm so humble before you. I'm so nothing. I'm like dust and ashes. Because of that, his sons merited two mitzvahs. What two mitzvahs to the Yidden merit because of Avram's saying is like dust and ashes? Efer para, the ashes of the red heifer, right? The red heifer, you sprinkle the ashes to make somebody pure. That's one mitzvah we got because of what Avram did. The afar Sotah, and the dirt of the Sotah, the dust of the Sotah. So two dirt mitzvahs were gotten because Avram said, I'm like dust and ashes, and that one of them is dust, one of them is ashes. Dust goes into the Sotah potion, and ashes goes into the red heifer is turned to ashes. And why did we get that? Because Avram said, I'm like dust and ashes. So Gemara says, wait, you missed one of the mitzvahs. But we also afar kisi adam, we have covering of the blood. We know when we have to shech the bird, we spoke about this in the Gemara not too long ago, that when you go to the bird, you have to throw, like we do by kaparis, we throw the dirt, the dust, dirt on top of the thing. That's another mitzvah of Kisi Adam. Why can we say that this, we also we merited to have dirt because of Avraham Avinu, number 3. So Hasam the Gemara, Hechsher mitzvah ika hano leka. Over there, we were, this is where Rashi explains it, that we are talking about mitzvahs which you get reward from. that because of what Avram did, we get a schus, we get a merit. That Avram was zoiche, he merited to his children to have a merit. Covering the blood with earth, there's no reward for it. There's no benefit. There's no real benefit to it. But by the red ashes of the red heifer, as Rashi explained, there's a great benefit because people are becoming pure that weren't Tamei. How are you supposed to come back into the Beis Hamikdash again? So the red heifer ashes is a great reward that we got in the merit of Avraham Avinu. Well, then you might ask, well, what's the earth of the Sotah water that you get, right? There's a long Rashi explains. So what's the benefit of the earth of the dirt of the Sotah water? He says it's also very helpful because first of all, the husband and wife were in a big fight. Once she drinks the potion, and if they see that she didn't cheat, then the husband and wife are back together again. What an amazing thing to have such a potion that could tell the husband, no, what you suspecting your wife never really happened. And now you're bringing the couple back together again. And God forbid, if she did cheat, you're stopping mamzerim. This woman's going to die. There'll be no more illicit children. So there is benefit from what Avram did. Is benefit, but we're not counting the dirt covering the blood of the birds, the blood of the animal that we're covering. Why not? Because there's nothing beneficial sort of from the act itself, and therefore it's not included. Very good. So Rava goes on, and this is we just had in the class the other day. Schar we had in the Chumash in the Tuesday night class. Schar in the marriage, Avram Avinu, that Avram Avinu said when the king of Sodom, after Avram won the war against the four kings, the king of Sodom said, Avram, take everything. And Avram says, not from a string to a strap of a shoe, I'm not going to take from you. Remember the pasuk says over there that he says, that you shouldn't say, Avram, that I made Avram rich. Now, our class, the Tuesday night class, we had a big shaila that I bothered most people for a long time. How come by the king of Mitzrayim, right? This is not the Gemara is discussing now, but that was our Tuesday night class of 2 months ago. That when Sarah was taken by Mitzrayim, king of Egypt, right? He took all the money from the king of Egypt. And by Stoim, and by the king of Stoim, he didn't want to take it, but he wouldn't fair and square. We had a whole class in that. One answers given is that because the money was done through war or whatever. We had an interesting class on that thing. But let's go to here. But because of the fact that Avram said, I'm not touching your money, I'm not taking a shoelace to a thread, Zachuban of the Beis Mitzvahs, again, we merited 2 mitzvahs because of what Avram Avinu said to the king of Sodom. What did we get? Chut shel tchelas, because he says, I'm not taking a string even, we get the blue string of tchelas. And what did we get? Because he said no straps, and we're taking from Ritzuah shel tefillin. We have the straps of tefillin. We had very geschmack, by the way. This is something very interesting. I learned then when I saw it. Rabbi Kiva Eger on the halacha. He says, why do we tie our left shoe first, even though everything else in Judaism we do with our right? Why do we tie our left shoe first? Menashe, yeah, because we put tefillin. Because we put tefillin on our left hand. Now you might ask the shaila, well, so what? What's the connection between tefillin and tying your shoe and tefillin? So that's the answer, because why did we merit the straps of tefillin? Because Avram said, I'm not taking a strap of the mechut v'atzrechnal. I'm not taking a strap of a shoe. So the mitzvah, the straps of tefillin came because of the shoelaces on the shoe, because the way you tie a shoe with straps, they're integrally connected. Because look what the Gemara says, we got the mitzvah of straps of tefillin because Avram said, I'm not taking shoelaces. So that's why they're specifically connected. So everything else in Yiddishkeit we do on the right, but tying your shoe, the halacha says you tie your left shoe first because it came from tefillin. Very geschmack. No, beautiful, a beautiful idea, I think, was from Rabbi Kiva Eger. Okay. When it comes to this Gemara, Bish Leimer Ritzuah. So he says, listen, Ritzuah shel tefillin. He says, okay, now, so we merited because of Avram, we got Ritzuah shel tefillin. I get the Ritzuah shel tefillin. That why we got straps to ksiv, why it's, in other words, beneficial, because remember, we're only getting rewarded for what Avram did, so it's a good reward. What's so good about the straps of tefillin? What's so good about tefillin? V'ra'u, because it says, V'ra'u kol am haaretz, that all the nations of the world will see. Ki shem Hashem nikra alecha, that the name of Hashem is on you, that by wearing the tefillin, that the nations of the world will be afraid of you. And that's a beautiful thing, Torah. So Avram merited us that. The Tanya we learned in Abraisa. Rabbi Lezer Gadol explains that verse that says the nations of the world will see that Hashem's name is on you. And they say, well, what does it mean? They'll see. How are they going to see that Hashem's name and they'll be and the Yarim Mimechan will be afraid of you. Elu tefillin sheberoish. These are the tefillin on the head. So tefillin is very powerful. That Avram merited us, I guess, the mitzvah of tefillin that came from Avram Avinu. Wow. So, and that's a beautiful merit that the nations of the world are afraid of us because of tefillin. They got us an unbelievable gift that Avram Avinu gave to us. By the way, Rabbi Zayin shared in the shir from the Alter Rebbe, a very good, very geschmack story, mamish from this Gemara, from this word sheberoish. Alter Rebbe, one of the guards, when Alter Rebbe was in jail, we're having it to Kislev tomorrow night. When one of the guards came to Alter Rebbe, he got very afraid, petrified, very scared of him. Later on, he asked Alter Rebbe how, and the Alter Rebbe was wearing tefillin then, and he said to the Alter Rebbe, why? Later on, what caused me to have such fear of you? He says, because I was wearing tefillin, and the Gemara Sotah, like here we just learned, says that the nations of the world will fear you when you're wearing tefillin. So you got afraid when you came in. So we told the Alter Rebbe, well, there's many other Jews that I go to when they wear tefillin. I've seen other Jews in tefillin, and they haven't gotten so shooken up. Why did I get shooken up for you? And he says, if you read the words of the Gemara carefully, it doesn't say Elu tefillin al haroish, the tefillin on the head. It says the tefillin shebaroish, the tefillin that's in the head. The Alter Rebbe, it wasn't just if you just wear tefillin, but you don't know what you're wearing. If you get the mitzvah of tefillin, it's in your head, not on your head. You sense the tefillin, that causes people to have the fear of the person. It's very geschmack of art. And by the way, it could be also probably connected with the Rebbe doing the campaign of tefillin by the wars in Israel, because it causes the nations to be fear of you. And Avram was zoichet for us, the Gemara is saying, because he said, I won't touch the strap. Okay. However, we're still up at the Shaila. I get tefillin's amazing. It protects us, brings awe. But chutshot chelas, but the string of blue thread, Mahi, what is this? What's the notorious? What's the merit? I guess what's this? What is this? The Tanya, so he says we learned in a Braisa. Rav Hoyer Ameir would say, Ma nishtanet chelas. It's an interesting question. Why is the color chelas, whatever the turquoise? You're going to see actually what color it is now. Why is it different from all other colors? Why is chelas? Why did Hashem choose that the tzitzis should have tchelas? Who decided that it should be tchelas? That it should be this? I don't know if it's like a purplish or a greenish color or something like that. Why should it be? Who decided it's so important? It should be on the tzitzis. Who chose it? So he answers. Interesting shayla. Because the color of tchelas is similar to the color of the ocean. So maybe it's like a bluish. Based on that, it's like a greenish bluish color. I think it's similar, close enough to the color, the shade of the color of the ocean. The yam and the color of the ocean itself is then a not too far away shade from similar to the skies. Rashi said, in other words, chelas can't go straight to the sky, but chelas is similar to the ocean, and the ocean is similar to the sky, similar enough color to the sky. And what's so special about the color of the sky? Doime is similar lekise hakavi to the heavenly throne. So by wearing chelas, you're wearing a color that's close to the ocean, and that color that will then remind you of the color of the sky, and the color of the sky will remind you of the kisei hakavid of the heavenly throne. So that's what's special about chelas. From one color to the next, you can go back to the color of the kisei hakavid, which shows the greatness and a powerful thing that the person could have. So that's the great reward that a person has. Let's see inside. Shenamar, where do we know that this whole story, that the heavenly throne is compared to the sky? Where does that come from? How do you know that the heavenly throne in Shemayim, the Shem's throne, is compared to the sky? So he says, look at the pasuk from Har Sinai, from Matan Torah, what vision the Jews saw. Shenamar, it says, by Yiru, they saw by Matan Torah, so the Kei Yisrael, the God of Israel. The tachas is like a very interesting, whatever, I'm not even sure 100% what the meaning is. The Rashi, I think, talks about it. They saw this vision. In the vision, they saw tachas raglav under Hashem's feet, under his feet, whatever the vision was. Kimaise, livnas hasapir, the whiteness of a brick, a sapphire, sorry. Livnas is a brick, sapphire is a sapphire brick under his feet, some kind of shade of color. And then what does it say in that same verse? It finishes, which is uve'etzem hashamayim l'toyer, like the pure heavens, like the essence of the pure heavens. So the sapphire stone that was on Mount Sinai over there, resembled a sapphire stone, which also looked like the pure heavens. So sapphire stone looks like pure heavens. Uksiv, and then in another verse it says Kimara, that he saw a vision in Yecheskel and Ezekiel. Evan Sapir, he saw the sapphire stone, and the sapphire stone is Dumus Akise, is like the heavenly throne. So we know that the sapphire stone is like the heavenly throne, and then the other verse by Mount Torah, by Har Sinai, it says that the sapphire stone also looks like the pure sky. So pure sky looks like the sapphire stone, and the ocean looks like the sky, and the Tchelis looks like the ocean, and therefore that's what we were saying because of Avraham Avinu, the great benefit that we can walk around with a piece of Tchelis of tzitzis, because it reminds you of Hakadosh Baruch Hu. You're wearing a color that reminds you of the heavenly throne. Or he says here that it's as if you receive the Shekhinah. So I'm just reading Rashi now. He says that it's as if you receive the heavenly Shekhinah by doing the mitzvah of tzitzis, and therefore it's very powerful. Okay. Zok the Mishnah, good, beautiful Gemara. Moving on to a new Mishnah. A few minutes left. Zok the Gemara. Well, what kind of paper does it need to be on? What kind of parchment? What kind of paper does it need to be on? If you don't write it, you cannot write it not on a luach, which means like a piece of wood. You can't write the words that need to be erased on wood. And not on paper. How did they make paper in those days? What does he mean? They used to shred up grasses and then reattach them with some kind of glue. It would make this kind of paper. No, you cannot use that. And not on diftera. Diftera is unfinished parchment. There's 3 levels to making parchment. First, you clean it, and then you salt it and soak it, and then you galvanize it with some kind of a paint, whatever goes on top of it. I'm not sure. However, it's not paint. I guess you cannot really. I don't know if you're allowed to put it as paint. Whatever, you galvanize it with soap and some other kind of a sulfide. And once those 3 are done, it's good, healthy, nice look parchment. And I'm sorry, diphthera is that it's not the finished product. Either you didn't salt and soak it yet, or you didn't clean it. The diphthera is not the fully finished product. You cannot write it in an unfinished parchment. El ala Megillah, it has to only be on a Megillah, or a healthy, regular piece of parchment. Shenamar, like it says in the pasuk, Ba'sefer, it says you should write this woman's thing on a sefer. And what is a sefer when it says? I mean, we use today we use sefer as a book, but what does it mean when it says in the Torah, write it on a sefer? It means on a parchment. Now, what kind of ink can you use in order to write it? Okay. Let's see if I can do this. You cannot write it with koimos is like a sap of a tree. And you cannot write it with kankantoim. I'm sorry, and that is a sulfite. It's some kind of sulfate. And you cannot write it with any kind of ink, as Rashi says, where the ink gets saturated in the parchment. Why not? Because remember, you have to scrape it off. And if the ink gets soaked in the parchment, you're not able to scrape the ink off. It'll always be there. A little bit of it will be left. You cannot write it with the ink. Has to be easily washed off. I think Rabbi Zayin, in his shir that I listened to, he said he was once, could you believe it, at a Sim Sefer Torah, somebody spilled the l'chaim that they were saying at the Sim Sefer Torah, and it washed off the letters from the Sefer Torah. So it seems, Mitch, you should protect the Torah over there, especially when they're dancing on some chas Torah with the l'chaim. It seems like the ink of the Torah has to be made in a way that it's supposed to actually, if you wash it, it comes off pretty quickly. So because we don't want the ink, this Torah is made with the same ink as we're saying here. For the Sotah water, it has to be able to scrub off. If you did, it's not soaked into the parchment. Ela b'dyoy, it has to be made with regular ink. B'dyoy, shenama, like the verse says, umacha, because it says erase it. Kas ksaf she'ach l'machais. It has to be that. I guess the Torah too, if I understand correctly from Zayin Sasher, that it has to be written with something that is possible for it to be come off, and it's not permanent, soaked and absorbed inside the parchment. Amar Rava, we're almost done. The Rava says there's 6 rules and regulations for this. We're going to learn the 6 rules. I'm going to leave it over here. There's 6 rules for this Sotah Megillah that's not allowed to be done. Megillah, Sotah, that the Megillah of the Sotah, the parchment of the Sotah, Shakasva Balayla, that was written at night, Psula, it's possible. I'm almost done, 2 more minutes. The Sotah that's written at night is possible, is no good. The Sotah, so it cannot be written at night. My time, how do you know? He's going to bring you the psukim for these things too. How do you know that the Sotah cannot be written at night? It's the parchment. Asya Torah, we make a gzeir shava between the 2 words Torah. Sivach, it says over here by Sotah, Va'asula koyin, the koyin should do for her as kol Torah zayis. All this Torah, they have to do it in order. We learned that it has to be written in order, and it has to follow this whole Torah, meaning the whole lesson in the Torah here that needs to be done for the site. That has to be done. So it says the word Torah. Siv Hasim, and it says over there, Al pi ha-Torah asher yerucha ve'al hamishpat, regarding inheritance, that you should follow the Sanhedrin when the Sanhedrin makes, well, just general mishpat. Al pi ha-Torah, based on the Torah, the laws, asher yerucha, that they will teach you, referring to the Sanhedrin, the supreme Jewish court, ve'al hamishpat, and the judgment. And we know that when the Sanhedrin would sit, ma mishpat bayoim, had to be done by day. Because I guess, and I think the laws of inheritance, whatever we learn out over there, that the Sanhedrin could only teach rules by day. So just like it says Torah over there, uses the term Torah for the lessons that Sanhedrin teach could only be done by day, so too when it says the word Torah here by Sotah, it's to compare that could only be done by day. Af Megillah Sotah, so too the Megillah of the Sotah by Yom has to be done by day. Kasva the Mafreya, rule number 2. If they wrote it out of order, as Rashi said, they wrote one word and then wrote the next word, or any kind of out of order, because there's 4 psukim there that have to be written. You cannot write it out of order, because if you do, sula, it's possible, it's no good. Diksiv, because it says v'kasav asa olay se'ela. You have to write these curses as it's in the Torah, ki dichsiva, as it is written. Don't make up your own, changing the verse order, changing the word order. No, you got to write exactly as it's written in the Torah. That's the order you have to write it here too. Kasva, rule number 3. Kasva koidim shetikabel aleh shvua. If they wrote it before she took on herself the oath, the promise. First, they make a promise that she never did anything wrong. And then they write it and erase, and they write the parchment. But if they wrote it first, then so again, this parchment's no good. It's not good. Shenamar, like it says, it has to be in order. Vishpia, it says first the kohen makes her swear that if she did it, she'll be punished. So whatever the kohen makes her swear. And after that, the kasav, he writes it that it comes afterwards. So that is rule number 3. Rule number 4, kasva igeres. If they wrote the letter, meaning without sirtut. Sirtut means that, ever looked in the parchment of the mezuzahs, tefillah, the Torah, there is a line. The sofer takes a ruler, and he has like this pen, this like sharp little tiny knife, and he scratches lines, and he knows, so he could write very smoothly. Doesn't make lines with ink like we have on our paper. He makes lines out of a knife, and he writes very neatly on top of that line. So the kasva igeres, if you wrote like a letter, meaning without the lines, psula, it's no good, because basefer, the term the Torah uses to describe this thing, is basefer in the parchment, and the sefer is something that has sirtut, has lines. Amar Rachmana is what the Torah says. A few more lines. So what is rule number 5? Kasva al shnei dapin. He wrote it on 2 columns, like in our Torahs, they have columns. So again, it's no good. It has to be 1 column, because sefer, it says a sefer like it's a single column book. Echad Amar Rachmana, the Torah says, write it as 1 single column. V'lo yishnei shleisha svarim, and not 2 or 3 books, meaning not 2 or 3 columns. And the rule number 6, kasav ois achas umachak ois achas. He wrote 1 letter and then erased it, and then wrote the next letter and erased it. Didn't write the whole thing and erased it at one time. Again, he wrote 1 letter. Psula, again, it's no good. You have to write the whole thing on one side, because the verse says that the kohen will do this whole Torah for her, do the whole thing for her. Because the Torah will do that, means the whole thing has to be done, and only then do we begin to erase it at that point in time. And that is the end of today's Shir Baruch Hashem. Again, an hour. And any questions or comments? Thank you all for joining me.